Don't get too comfy, because we're starting with the truth they tried to bury under fake laughs and cheap comments. This is the moment they prayed would never arrive. The moment they joked about in front of others like it was impossible, all while shaking in private because they knew you might actually do it one day. And you did. You went exactly where they said you wouldn't dare go. You walked straight into the place they gate-kept behind warnings, fear tactics, and friendly advice. They told everyone you'd fold. Instead, you showed up calm, steady, and sharp, like someone who already read the final chapter of this story and knew how it ends. They wanted obedience. You answered with independence. They wanted fear. You delivered precision. They wanted you silent. Somehow, you became the sound they cannot escape. They wanted you small. The universe made you impossible to ignore. And now look who's acting strange. The same people who once threw jokes at your back like darts are whispering your name like it's a problem they can't solve. Rooms shift when you enter. Conversations glitch. Eyes dart to the floor. Phones magically flip face down. Their whole vibe changes, not out of respect, not yet, but out of fear, wearing polite manners. It's funny. They thought you'd chase validation. Instead, you became the storm that validates itself. Press the like button and subscribe to return this energy back into the universe. You didn't get here by screaming. You didn't throw tantrums or beg for chances. You watched, you studied, you waited. You let them think you were harmless while you were quietly gathering every piece they underestimated. And that's why they're freaking out now. They expected noise from you. They got results that never warned them first. They thought you'd break down. They didn't realize you were calculating the entire time. This shift didn't fall from the sky. It came from years of holding yourself together while people pushed you toward your breaking point. It came from nights when the world went quiet and your thoughts got loud. When you had no backup, no applause, no promise of a better tomorrow, and still you kept going. They didn't see you carrying that weight. They didn't see the damage you hid just so you could move forward without dragging everyone into your pain. They only saw the moments where you looked fine, and they assumed that meant you were done growing. But you were evolving underground, in silence, like a root system preparing to crack through concrete. And now that crack just happened, and they can't patch it up. When they said you'd never make it, they weren't joking. They genuinely believed you were the safe target, the background character, the easy one to dismiss. They used your kindness as proof you weren't dangerous. They used your patience as evidence you lacked power. They used your silence as permission to disrespect you. And then the universe moved. It gave you one opening, one moment, one shift where everything you learned clicked at once. You took it. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't explain yourself. You stepped into that moment like someone who finally remembered who they are. And that memory hit harder than any comeback you could have spoken. Now they're scrambling behind the scenes, trying to figure out what version of you they just unlocked. They're replaying old conversations, trying to see the moment they missed it. They're checking old screenshots, digging through the past, hoping to find clues that explain how you transformed right in front of them. They're calling people who don't even like them anymore, asking, "Have you noticed something?" They're searching for a weakness that doesn't exist in the places they expect. This is what happens when someone plays with a person who actually had a story behind their silence. Because honestly, Chosen One, this wasn't just a glow-up. This was a full shift in your story arc. The universe didn't push you forward gently. It launched you like a warning shot. You came back smarter, colder, cleaner, more precise. You cut ties without shaking. You moved pieces on the board without announcing the game. You showed them you're not operating on their level anymore. You're operating on the level they used to pretend they were on. And here's the part that hits them the hardest. They didn't expect you to survive the things you survived. Let's not rewrite history. You went through situations that cracked stronger people. You experienced betrayals that would have erased others. You walked through emotional storms with nothing but a tired spine and pure willpower. People you trusted switched sides. People you helped tried to flex like they built you. People you defended tried to humiliate you. You were carrying wounds they thought were jokes, and you stayed standing. When they said, just give up, you didn't. When they said, you already lost, you hadn't even started. When they said, no one comes back from that, the universe whispered, watch this. You went through phases where your entire life felt like a test. Every day felt heavier than the last. You were breaking in slow motion, but you never let them see the pieces. You never let the enemy taste your fear. You had every reason to quit and no audience cheering you on, but still you pushed forward with quiet stubbornness. That's the part that scares them now. You survived things you never talked about. You endured pain you never shared. You handled chaos without throwing it onto anyone else. You healed yourself in the dark, and now you shine in a way they can't dim. This is the nightmare you birthed, a version of you they can't manipulate, intimidate, or control. They thought they were dealing with the old you, the soft one, the hesitant one, the one who over-explained, apologized too fast, and held back their own power to make others comfortable. They wanted that version forever. They relied on it. They depended on your softness to hide their insecurity. But that version of you isn't here anymore. A new one walked in without asking for a grand intro. A new one stood up after being pushed too many times. A new one stopped playing small to protect people who never protected you. And now those people don't know whether to fear you, respect you, or avoid you entirely. You can feel it too, that shift in the atmosphere, that strange silence that follows you like a shadow, that tension in the room when you speak, that look in their eyes like they're trying to figure out how someone they underestimated became the one they should have left alone. You're standing in the aftermath of every storm they hoped would destroy you, and somehow you look stronger, sharper, and calmer than before. You didn't react, you transformed. You didn't prove them wrong. You outgrew the entire argument. You didn't get revenge. You became the reminder of why they should have treated you better. Chosen one, this is the moment everything starts lining up. The moment their words collapse under the weight of your evolution. The moment the universe pulls receipts they thought were lost. The moment your strength becomes undeniable, even to the people who pretended not to see it. And now they know. You actually went there. You crossed the line they built to trap you. You birthed the nightmare they cannot control. And deep down, they understand one thing clearly. This is only the beginning of what you can do. Before we go any further, Chosen One, take a breath. You've already flipped their world upside down just by showing up, and the next part of this message is only going to hit harder. If you're still here, that already tells me you're built for this level of truth. So do something real quick. Hit the like button and subscribe to push this message deeper into the universe. Think of it as sending a shockwave straight back at the people who swore you'd never reach this point. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you feel that shift inside you, that little spark that says, yeah, I know exactly why they're panicking now. And if you want to support the team behind this message, leave a super thanks. Even small support keeps this mission alive and gives us the power to keep exposing the lies they hid from you. Now, chosen one, let's step into the real part of the story. If you're truly who I think you are, you won't even want to click away. You'll feel the pull. You'll feel the truth sharpening inside you. Let's dive into what nightmare you actually birthed. Number 1, they fed on your silence. Now they're choking on your comeback. Funny how they loved you quiet until your silence turned into their punishment. Chosen one, before we get into the chaos you unleashed, let's sit with the truth they hoped you'd never recognize. The pain you carried wasn't random. It wasn't character building. It wasn't something you were meant to swallow and smile through. It was engineered, piece by piece, by people who benefited from keeping you controlled, drained, and unaware of your own power. They fed on your patience like it was their lifeline. They treated your silence like it was a free pass. They acted like your restraint was guaranteed forever. They walked around thinking your loyalty was infinite, your tolerance unbreakable, your kindness unpaid labor they could exploit without consequence. But pain has a weird way of teaching lessons nothing else can. And you, chosen one, learned every single one of them. While they laughed at your stress, you were learning discipline. While they ignored your loneliness, you were learning independence. While they mocked your overthinking, you were learning strategy. While they underestimated your quiet, you were sharpening your edge. They didn't know your sleepless nights were turning into your blueprint. They didn't know those deep cuts were building a version of you that didn't need their approval, their validation, or their understanding. They didn't know that in trying to break you, they were training you to walk through hell without flinching. Now look at the aftermath. Look at how the room reacts when you enter. You don't even have to speak. The energy shifts like someone hit a switch. Conversations stall, eyes flick up, then down, bodies get tense. The people who once ran their mouths suddenly run out of jokes. They can't explain why they feel that pressure in their chest when you walk past. They don't understand why your presence feels heavier, colder, sharper. You do, because you lived the storm. They're just seeing the wreckage for the first time. Here's the part they'll never admit out loud. They know they played with the wrong one. Every ignored text, every fake laugh, every comment meant to bruise, every little moment they thought you'd take because you're too nice to push back. You absorbed it all, but not the way they imagined. They thought you were breaking. They didn't realize you were building. They mistook your silence for weakness when it was actually the only space you had left to grow. Sickening, isn't it? How they treated your patience like permission. And now they're confused. Now they're panicking. Now they're trying to figure out what changed. They walk around with this weird tension, like they're waiting for consequences they can't predict. Their mind repeats the same question over and over. What did we create? Because the truth is ugly for them, they train the very thing they're afraid of now. Chosen one, you didn't become powerful in safe spaces. You didn't grow in rooms that loved you. You grew in the places where you were dismissed, ignored, pressured, suffocated, and pushed too close to your breaking point. You grew in environments designed to make you feel small. And instead of shrinking, you adapted. They don't understand how the pain changed you because they never saw the process. They didn't witness the nights where your mind wouldn't shut off because you were replaying everything, trying to figure out what was wrong with you when the problem was them the entire time. They didn't hear the thoughts you battled in isolation. They didn't see you sitting alone trying to hold yourself together while pretending nothing bothered you. They wanted you fragile. They didn't realize fragility can evolve into clarity. Now you walk in with a different type of energy. The room picks up on it before your mouth even opens. There's a weight behind your silence now, a maturity in your eyes, a calmness that scares them more than any outburst ever could. You don't argue anymore. You don't beg anymore. You don't chase anymore. You're done explaining, defending, or proving. And that's what shifted the entire atmosphere. Once the quiet one learns their worth, the whole room learns fear. They feel the consequences they swore would never arrive. They sense the distance you created, and they know it wasn't accidental. They can tell you switched from survival mode to strategic mode. You're not reacting now. You're choosing. And here's where the fear really kicks in. They don't know what you're capable of anymore. You broke the version of yourself they relied on. You stopped being predictable. You stopped being accessible. You stopped being easy to manipulate. They're facing a version of you that no longer needs validation to move, no longer needs approval to speak, no longer needs permission to evolve. You were the calm before. Now you're the storm after. Chosen one, the pain changed the room because the pain changed you. It hardened your spirit. It sharpened your instincts. It burned away anything inside you that could be controlled. Think about it. Would they have acted that bold if they knew this version of you existed? Would they have pushed you that far if they realized the universe was shaping a monster they couldn't cage? Would they have laughed if they knew they were building the very force that now terrifies them? The answer is obvious. They never would have risked it. But they did. And now they're stuck with the results. You've become a walking reminder of their mistakes. Every time they see you doing well, leveling up, staying calm, moving clean, they feel a little sting in their chest. They feel the weight of everything they tried to sabotage. They feel the karma they thought wouldn't come back around. They don't deserve to know your next move. They don't deserve access to your growth. They don't deserve the version of you that survived everything they put you through. They wasted their chance. They lost their privilege. Chosen one, this shift isn't about revenge. It's about evolution. Your pain rewired your entire world. It forced you to outgrow the people who only loved you when you were easy to silence. It forced you to rely on yourself in a way that made your spirit unbreakable. It forced you to stand alone until standing alone became your strength instead of your burden. And now the room feels different because you are different. Your presence hits harder. Your silence carries lessons. Your energy exposes intentions. Your boundaries feel like walls they can't climb. They can't handle the new you because the new you isn't here to be handled. You didn't just survive what they did. You weaponized it. And that's why they're freaking out now. That's why they whisper. That's why they avoid eye contact. That's why their jokes died off. That's why the room shifts when you step in. You didn't break, you transformed. And the universe made sure every one of your enemies had a front row seat to the nightmare you birthed. Number 2, you let them talk while you rewired the entire game behind their backs. Arrogance blinds fools. Silence builds monsters. Chosen one, let's get into the part that haunts them the most, the part that makes their stomach drop every time they think about you. You didn't announce anything. You didn't warn anybody. You didn't give updates, explanations, apologies, or cute little "I'm working on myself" speeches. You moved like someone who owed nothing to anyone. And honestly, you didn't. While they were busy performing confidence, you were building strength. While they were bragging about imaginary wins, you were absorbing real lessons. While they were loud, you were strategic. While they demanded attention, you demanded improvement. And that quiet grind created the exact nightmare they're dealing with now. Imagine this. The entire world thinks you're standing still, but behind the scenes, you're rearranging your entire reality like a chess master, quietly shifting pieces before checkmate. Every night, you stayed up learning, thinking, deleting old versions of yourself. They were asleep, believing the story they made up about you. Every time they mocked your silence, you were actually sharpening it into a weapon. Every moment they laughed at what they thought you were evolving into something they never prepared for. People who underestimate silence always get humbled by what grows inside it. They stayed arrogant because they believed you were stuck. They believed your lack of reaction meant lack of ability. They believed staying quiet meant staying small. They believed you were predictable, easy to read, easy to dismiss. They were so loud about their assumptions, so confident in their delusion, they didn't even look twice at the shifts happening right under their nose. You weren't stuck, you were becoming, and now hindsight is hitting them like a truck. They replay old conversations, and suddenly everything looks different. Their mind whispers, "Why didn't we see this? How did they pull this off so fast? What else were they hiding? Did we train our own downfall?" Yes, they did. Chosen one, imagine this scene. There's a group of people running their mouths, convinced they know everything about you, convinced they've figured you out. Meanwhile, you're in your own world, quietly mastering skills, cutting dead weight, planning moves they don't even have vocabulary for. They thought your silence meant the story was over, not knowing the universe was handing you new chapters. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is where legends gather ammunition. While they laughed at you, you studied them. While they rolled their eyes, you rolled out new strategies. While they called you weird for distancing yourself, you were building a future where they don't even qualify for access. They thought you were fading. You were leveling up without witnesses. That's why they can't breathe now. That's why they're stuck analyzing your every action like detectives who realized they missed the biggest clue. They had full access to the old you and still didn't realize you were changing right in front of them. Imagine this, a villain in a movie smirking because the hero looks weak, not realizing the hero just found the blueprint that exposes the entire system. That's exactly what your silence did. You didn't flex. You didn't brag. You didn't need to. Your progress was building in the dark, and darkness is where the strongest upgrades happen. Not every transformation needs an audience. Some of the deadliest ones prefer the shadows. Chosen one, they didn't just underestimate you. They counted on your silence staying harmless. They depended on you being passive, predictable, easy to ignore. They were arrogant because they believed you were stuck in their story about you. They were arrogant because they mistook your quiet for surrender. They were arrogant because they believed you needed them more than they needed you. They felt safe until they didn't. And now they're dealing with the consequences. They didn't respect your potential when it was growing. They only respect it now that it's too late to benefit from it. Some people only understand power once it hits them in the face. Before that, they call it ego. Before that, they call it luck. Before that, they call it madness. And you know what's crazy? They told people you were changing. They laughed about your distance. They joked that you weren't doing anything serious. They told others you'd never make it because your moves weren't loud enough for their ego-driven standards. But look at you now. You became the very thing their arrogance swore you could never be. Imagine this. They're sitting in a room talking about you with confidence dripping from their voice, and then someone pulls up evidence that you evolved, upgraded, transformed, and suddenly their whole face changes. The room goes quiet. Their throat gets tight. No joke lands, no insult fits anymore. Their arrogance collapses under the weight of your reality. This is why they're panicking now. This is why every new thing you do scares them. This is why they watch you quietly from fake accounts. This is why they study your every move like students trying to pass a test they didn't study for. You moved in silence, but your results are loud enough to break their pride. Chosen one, let's answer the question sitting in your mind right now. Why were they so arrogant in the first place? It's simple. They thought your silence meant you needed them. They thought your kindness meant you lacked power. They thought your patience meant you lacked options. They thought your distance meant you were lost. They thought your silence meant defeat. But your silence meant strategy. Your distance meant protection. Your patience meant discipline. Your kindness meant character. Your quiet meant you were cooking something bigger than they could imagine. And now they realize too late that you were never the one who needed validation. They were the ones who needed you to stay below your potential so they could feel comfortable above theirs. Imagine this, a battlefield at night. You're moving through the dark, silent, focused, while your enemies sit around campfires bragging about how they already won. Then the sun rises, and they see you standing on higher ground than all of them combined. That's exactly the energy your silence created. You didn't rush. You didn't panic. You didn't crumble, you repositioned, and that repositioning broke the illusion they built around you. It forced them to face a version of you they never predicted. It forced them to accept that your quiet years were training years. It forced them to face the fact that they never actually outranked you. They were just louder. Chosen one, here's another quote for their ego. Arrogance laughs at what it doesn't understand, then cries when it finally does. They never respected your rise until the universe made it undeniable. They never respected your discipline until they realized it was aimed at them. They never respected your silence until it turned into the storm that swallowed their arrogance whole. And now they sit there, replaying everything, trying to figure out how they missed the signs. They didn't miss them, they ignored them. Because arrogance convinces fools they're safe, even while the ground shifts under their feet. You moved quietly. You grew quietly, you became quietly, but your results, your aura, your presence, nothing quiet about that. Chosen one, your silence wasn't weakness. It was the weapon that prepared you for the moment they feared most, the moment you outgrew them without needing to destroy them. You became the nightmare they birthed through arrogance, and the masterpiece you built through silence. Number 3, your quiet is the monster they can't outrun. Nothing terrifies a guilty person more than someone who stopped reacting. Chosen one, your calm hits them harder than any rage ever could. Anger is loud, messy, easy to dismiss. Calm is calculated. Calm is the final warning. Calm is the moment the room realizes the storm isn't coming. It's already here, and it looks exactly like you. They expected screaming, arguing, explosions they could point at and say, "See, they're unstable." But you didn't give them that. You didn't give them anything. You just pulled your energy back, locked your chest like a vault, and moved with a silence that feels like judgment. And that calm is eating them alive. Imagine this, a hallway after a fight, but the person they tried to break just walks past them without a single word. That silence follows them home. It crawls into their thoughts at night. It rewinds every moment they underestimated you. Your calm has become their mirror, and they hate what they see in it. Calm exposes the truth anger can't. Your energy changed. You're not celebrating. You're not chasing revenge. You're focused, detached, purpose-driven. This scares them because it means you're no longer controlled by emotion, which means you're no longer controlled by them. They wanted you reactive. They needed you predictable, but calm makes you unreadable, untouchable, unreachable. And now they whisper among themselves like terrified interns in a lab they shouldn't have entered. What did we create? What if they're done with us? What if they're planning something? What if we can't fix this? Here's the truth that stings them most. They built the nightmare they're running from. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Every lie, every insult, every moment they mistook your patience for weakness. Your calm is not the absence of fire. It's the fire they can't escape. Number 4, they called it kindness, but it was your surveillance mode. Never mistake a soft voice for a soft mind. Some smiles are gathering evidence. Chosen one, let's make something very clear. Your kindness was never weakness. Your patience wasn't naivety. Your silence wasn't surrender. You weren't being too nice. You were watching, recording, studying every slip-up they thought they got away with, every joke that cut too deep, every relax, it's not that serious, every boundary they stepped over just to test how much they could get away with. They thought you were clueless. You were collecting data like a strategist building a case. Your kindness didn't mean you didn't see it. It meant you didn't waste energy reacting to it. Imagine this, a lion lying in the grass, calm and still, while the hyenas laugh too close. The hyenas think the lion is harmless because it isn't moving, but the lion isn't asleep. It's observing, measuring, deciding. That was you. Some people don't realize they're being studied until the experiment ends. And when you finally pulled back, when you went silent, when your energy shifted without warning, their arrogance delayed their panic. They honestly believed you'd come crawling back. Think about how wild that is. They thought losing them would break you. They thought you couldn't function without their attention. They thought you'd beg for the same disrespect you were already tired of. That one assumption exposes their whole mindset. They believed they were the prize. They believed you were replaceable. They believed your loyalty was guaranteed, no matter how they treated you. Now they're sitting there confused, replaying every moment, trying to understand. When you noticed the truth about them, you noticed everything. Your kindness wasn't weakness. Your kindness was the calm before your exit, and your exit is the consequence they earned. Number 5. They thought the pain would end you. It turned you into a specialist. Pain doesn't break certain people, it upgrades them. Chosen one, let's drag the truth into the light. The pain they threw at you wasn't random, it was targeted. It was meant to split you open, scatter your focus, make you fold so they could say, "See, I knew they weren't built for this." But you're not built like the average person. You don't crack under pressure. You analyze it. You don't melt in the fire. You map its temperature. You don't collapse when hurt. You study the architecture of the hit. Pain became your instructor, and you learned everything they never wanted you to know. You learned patterns. Who lies first? Who switches sides quickest? Who jokes the loudest to hide insecurity? You learned timing, when someone is testing you, when someone is pushing limits, when someone is hoping you'll snap so they can play the victim. You learned pressure points, both theirs and yours. You figured out exactly what makes people panic, what makes them sloppy, what makes them reveal themselves without you asking a thing. While they tried to destroy you, they accidentally gave you the manual to how they operate. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a storm that's supposed to take you out, but instead of running, you're studying the wind, taking notes, learning its rhythm. By the time the storm clears, you walk out with mastery over the very force that was meant to erase you. That's what happened. They used chaos. You learned precision. They used fear. You learned control. They used drama. You learned discipline. Here's the truth that eats them alive. Their biggest mistake wasn't hurting you. It was teaching you how to never be hurt the same way again. Pain didn't break you. Pain educated you. And now you move with the kind of clarity that terrifies the people who depended on your confusion. Number 6, you let go of the rope, and they realized they were the ones hanging from it. Nothing is scarier than someone who stops fighting for what no longer deserves them. Chosen one, this part hits different because it exposes the moment everything flipped. You didn't lose control, you released it. There's a huge difference. Losing control is chaotic, desperate, loud. Releasing control is intentional, quiet, dangerous. You didn't explode, scream, threaten, or break character. You didn't give them the meltdown they rehearsed reactions for. Instead, you revealed just enough truth, just enough emotion, just enough of your mind to show them the cage door was wide open and you weren't the one trapped. Imagine this. Someone pulls a fire alarm expecting chaos, but instead the building goes silent. That silence makes people panic harder than any flames ever could. That's exactly what your controlled reveal did. A single, calm sentence from you felt like a full earthquake to them. Some monsters aren't born. They're built by the people who swore they'd never wake them. When you finally said less, they heard everything. The panic in their voice wasn't concern. It wasn't care. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Pure, selfish fear. They weren't scared for you. They were scared of you. They weren't trying to fix the damage. They were trying to shove the version of you they created back into the cage they built. But here's what they finally realized. Too late. Too late to manipulate. Too late to control. Too late to twist the story. Too late to shrink you back down. You had already transformed, already detached, already shifted into a version of yourself they couldn't handle, couldn't read, couldn't influence. You didn't lose yourself, you lost them. And that loss was their biggest fear and your greatest freedom. Number 7, you walked out, and the whole room fell apart without you. Some people don't realize who kept the peace until the peace walks out. Chosen one, this is the part they replay in their head at 3 a.m. with that sick feeling in their chest. You didn't storm out, you didn't slam doors, you didn't create drama. You simply stood up, walked away, and the entire room collapsed like you were the beam holding the whole structure together. They thought your exit would be quiet. They didn't expect it to echo. You didn't disappear. You detonated quietly. Imagine this, a room full of people laughing, whispering, taking shots at you behind smirks, and then you stand up, say nothing, and leave. Suddenly, the air gets thick. The laughter dies. The tension they projected onto you boomerangs straight back at them. That's because your presence wasn't the problem. It was the glue. And when glue leaves, everything cracks. Absence is the loudest revenge. It forces them to hear every truth your silence exposed. Your absence became a siren they couldn't escape. The empty space where your energy used to be hit them harder than any speech or confrontation. Regret started creeping in, not because they suddenly grew a conscience, but because losing access to you exposed how much they relied on you for emotional balance, stability, validation, direction, all the things they pretended they didn't need. And here's the twist they'll never admit. They expected you to fight to stay. Instead, you left to protect your peace. You didn't stay to prove them wrong. You didn't stay to fix what they broke. You didn't stay to win. You left, and that's exactly why you won. Imagine this. When a candle leaves a dark room, the room doesn't get to complain about the darkness. That's what happened. You took your presence, your patience, your emotional intelligence, your grounding energy. And suddenly, they were left with nothing but their own noise. Some exits aren't escapes, they're declarations. Your absence exposed the chaos they created. Your silence exposed the disorder they tried to blame on you. Your distance exposed the truth. You weren't the problem, you were the peace. And now they feel the loss in a way that burns deeper than any confrontation ever could. Because when absence becomes power, the ones who misused your presence finally meet the consequences. Number 8. You cut their script in half, and now they can't read you at all. Fear doesn't show up when you get stronger. It shows up when they can't predict you anymore. Chosen one, this is where their whole system collapses. They built an entire mental blueprint of you, how you react, how you bend, how you break, how you forgive, how you fold under pressure. They studied your patterns the same way a hacker studies a code they think they can crack. They were confident, arrogant, sure they had you figured out, sure they could play you forever. And then you broke the pattern. Imagine this, a machine running perfectly because it knows every input. Then suddenly one command glitches the entire operating system. Lights flicker, warnings flash. Everything they relied on malfunctions. That's exactly what you did with one quiet shift. You stopped responding the way their ego needed you to. You didn't become complex, you became unavailable. They failed to realize your predictability wasn't who you were. It was who you allowed yourself to be while you were learning them. Once you outgrew that role, their map turned useless. Every attempt to read you now ends in a dead signal. Every test they try gives them nothing. Every button they push does not respond. You didn't become mysterious. You became uninterested. That's what terrifies them. Not your power, your detachment. They can't control someone who doesn't need anything from them. They can't manipulate someone who sees the game from above the board. They can't predict someone who finally recognizes their value. Imagine this. They reach for the same old emotional lever they always pulled, but it snaps off in their hand. Panic waves through their mind, because if they can't control your reactions, they can't control the story. When predictability dies, fear replaces it. Now they tiptoe, overthink, whisper. They replay old moments trying to understand where they lost access. They thought hurting you would weaken you. They didn't realize it would rewrite your entire operating system. Chosen one, their system didn't just crash. You unplugged it and walked away. Number 9, you turned into the blueprint they can't outgrow. Some people don't miss you. They miss who they were when they still had access to you. Chosen one, this is the part they'll never admit, even under pressure. You became the standard without lifting a finger. You weren't trying to be unforgettable. You weren't auditioning for their loyalty. You were just being you, present, real, grounded, aware. But the universe did something viciously poetic with that. It made you the reference point their future can't compete with. Imagine this. Someone buys a cheap knockoff, thinking it'll replace the real thing, until the stitching falls apart in their hands. That's every connection they chase after you. Every new person feels thinner. Every bond lacks weight. Every conversation feels hollow. They keep reaching for depth and getting surface-level noise. They keep chasing validation and getting confusion instead. And they can't figure out why nothing hits the same. You didn't lose relevance. You became the ruler everything else gets measured against. They're haunted by the comparison they said they'd never make. They swore they'd move on easily. They swore you were replaceable. They swore their new connections were so much better. But when the high wore off, the truth sat on their chest like a brick. You weren't a moment, you were a shift. And now every person after you highlights what they lost. Your emotional intelligence, your patience, your presence, your grounding energy, your ability to understand things without being told. Impact doesn't need proximity. Your absence does more than your presence ever needed to. Imagine this. They're in a conversation with someone new, and the person laughs in a way that's slightly off. And suddenly, they remember how you used to laugh. They feel a disappointment they can't explain. They try to shake it off, but the comparison is automatic. It happens in their mind, even when they don't want it. That's what happens when someone becomes the blueprint. Not the favorite, not the memory, the blueprint. You didn't try to be unforgettable, you just didn't fake who you were. Chosen one, you've become the silent metric their future must measure up to, and nothing is measuring up. Number 10, you walked off the board, and they're still moving pieces for a game that's over. Some battles aren't won, they're abandoned, and that's what terrifies the opponent most. Chosen one, this is the final slap they never saw coming. You didn't beat them, you didn't crush them, you didn't win the way their ego expected. You did something far more humiliating. You outgrew the entire game. You stepped out of the arena while they were still swinging at shadows, convinced you'd come back for round 12. They're still rehearsing arguments, still replaying conversations, still drafting explanations in their head. Meanwhile, you're already in another universe mentally. Imagine this: two people playing chess. One is sweating, panicking, calculating every move, and the other just stands up, dusts off their hands, and leaves the board behind. The one left sitting there doesn't feel victorious. They feel foolish. That's exactly how your exit hit them. You didn't go silent to punish them. You went silent because the conversation no longer qualified for your time. The rules changed the moment you evolved. Their emotional tricks stopped working. Their bait stopped landing. Their attempts to provoke you bounced off like cheap plastic darts. You weren't ignoring them to hurt them. You were ignoring them because their energy no longer aligned with the person you became. The story wasn't worth engaging in anymore. You outgrew the plot, the characters, the dialogue, the tension, the entire narrative. They're frustrated for one reason. You walked away without needing closure. You didn't require apologies, explanations, or dramatic endings. You simply moved. Unfinished people argue. Finished ones move. They're unfinished. That's why they're stuck debating ghosts. You're finished. That's why you stepped into a life where their name doesn't even register. Imagine this. They're talking about you like it's still relevant, but every attempt to reach your energy hits a locked door with no handle. They can't call you back in. They can't pull you back down. They can't lure you into the chaos you once tolerated. You didn't just leave the game. You ended their purpose in it. And now, they're left holding pieces to a board that no longer exists, wondering how they lost to someone who simply walked away. Number 11. Your truth walked in, and their whole fiction collapsed on impact. Lies don't die when truth speaks. Lies die when truth lives. Chosen one, this is where everything unraveled for them. They rewrote the story 1,000 times, trying to make themselves look clean, trying to twist timelines, trying to turn your strength into instability and their insecurity into innocence. But reality refused to cooperate. You didn't defend yourself. you lived differently. And nothing destroys a lie faster than a life that contradicts it. Imagine this: someone builds a fantasy world out of thin air, and then you walk into the room and the whole thing glitches like a broken video game. That's what your presence did. Their lies needed your agreement to survive, and your silence refused to validate a single one of them. You didn't return seeking revenge. You returned as undeniable proof. Every step forward you took made the past they created heavier on their shoulders. Every glow-up exposed the cracks in their narrative. You didn't punish them. You simply outgrew the dimension where they mattered. And once indifference replaced emotion, the cord that tethered you to their story snapped clean. You're not their memory. You're their unfinished possibility. That's why your silence dismantles them. They told themselves reactions equal relevance, but you give them nothing, and that nothing hurts more than any confrontation. Intentional absence becomes judgment. You didn't just prove them wrong once, you became proof they cannot escape. And something else happened, something they never predicted. You didn't inspire people, you gave them permission. Others watched you refuse to break, and suddenly their own stagnation became uncomfortable. Your evolution created movement in people who were stuck. Your transformation exposed how much everyone else was settling. This wasn't chaos, this was evolution. You went there. You kept walking. They stayed frozen, arguing with a version of you that no longer exists, while the real you stands miles ahead, untouchable, undeniable, and no longer part of their story. So, chosen one, if you made it this far, then you already know why they're shaken. You didn't just survive their story, you rewrote your own, and now the universe moves with you, not against you. If this message hit where it needed to, press that like button if you haven't already, and if you're not part of our family yet, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Stay sharp, stay rising, and stay untouchable. The next chapter is going to expose even more.